think we're live on stream.
Are we?
Yeah.
No, let's just
Hello,
stand here
everybody.
and stare at each other. That's fine. I'm busy writing the script. Cover for me, Zay.
Welcome back to Worldbuilders Weekly. It's nice to see you guys. Basically, this is further in the script, but basically we didn't want to compete with potential political craziness going on in the US or the inauguration tomorrow. So we thought instead of bringing on a guest, we would just hang out, Gray and I, some cocoa. I got my cocoa, maybe some show and tell, talk about
I got my cocoa.
Some stuff in fiction that we like. And welcome back. Imperfect Pour. I'm not sure how I feel about that mashup of the names here, but thank you.
Yeah, and although I'm honestly, I'm conflicted about my cocoa because I've said it before. I'm a former Marine, so I do tend to try and support veterans' causes, and the cocoa that I'm drinking is euphemistically called combat cocoa, and it is from the Black Rifle Coffee Company, which as an organization is run by vets and does a lot of advocacy work for veterans. But one of the people that was out there had a Black Rifle Coffee Company, I think it was his hat or something, that's how they identified him. And so I'm like, well, now I don't want to drink it. But wait, that's letting, do you judge a company based on whether some people who, I don't know. I don't know what to do.
I don't know. Combat coffee sounds like the opposite of fair trade.
But it is good cocoa. I'll put it that way. But
Yeah, I am going to play. I can't hear the awesome apparent lo-fi that you guys are probably getting, so I'm gonna turn some on my browser, and I'm gonna listen to some myself in the background, and it'll be really nice.
Well, I, on the other hand, believe in
I've actually been using Curology on my own dime. I used it for like 6.
Hey, Zay, we can hear that.
Yeah. That was pretty fucking loud.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Sorry, guys.
But good segue into this episode brought to you by Curology. Apparently.
Man, I hope we don't get like a weird tag. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Essence of Aaron just finished Rhythm of War. Listening to it, was it worth the trip? Those audiobooks are like take a day and a half out of your life. Total listening time. Was it a good ride, even if you were sick? I'd be interested to hear that review. I wish we could just virtually send some cocoa to Aaron. He's not feeling good.
I'm sorry, Aaron. I hope you feel better. Thank you for joining us.
Yes. And, was it sick? Oh, okay. Well, I listened to it twice as fast,
All right, now I have my lo-fi going that you guys can't hear. So that's good.
That's fine. Yeah, and Jake Esther, sorry about the interview. I do hope that we can help take your mind off things and make things a little bit better. Now that I've started out by talking about controversial non-fair trade cocoa, which, by the way, I don't know that it's not fair trade. It might be.
No, it probably. If it's for veterans or made by veterans, I'd hope that they'd also think ethically. But yeah, it's just the name. It sounds.
Yeah. I think we're being subtly encouraged to look at the script. Hey, look, there's a trivia. We have a trivia question from last week, which was one near and dear to my heart, which is,
Why don't you take it, Gray?
Sure, I'll do that. What is the name of the person who invented the layout for the commonly used QWERTY, QWERTY keyboard, as well as the typewriter? And did we? Yes, there's a script, Julia. There's always one. So interesting. We have a dissonance. Unlikely Math says Quentin Wirtz. What is your? The answer that I have on the script was Christopher Latham Scholes. So I personally am not 100% sure which way it was. So I think we have a dissonance, and we will send it off to our research team to determine what was the actual thing. Honestly, when I got involved in this kind of stuff, I was reading there's a little like webzine comic about why it's silly to type the way we do and how much more time you can spend typing on things. But do you know the real reason why I wanted to learn the Dvorak typing? Because I do touch typing. So my keyboard would still look like a QWERTY keyboard, but when I'd hit the keys, because it was in the computer, it would type different letters, which meant that my password was much more secure. QWERTZ, gotcha. I see, it was a joke. Sorry, my humor button is not turned on right now. Plus, I'm in the midst of geeking out about keyboards, and so seriously, my keyboard as it is freaking ridiculous. It has like, extra handles and extra things on there. It's just, yeah, I'm big on keyboards.
There's a really great podcast by Radio Labs, and I can attest personally to this, about how hard keyboards are to function for non-English characters, especially when it comes to tonal languages like Mandarin or Cantonese, where it's only associated like characters and radicals to, essentially they're symbols. So it's just weird. But yeah, you guys should check it out. I don't have a link for it. Just remember what I said. Let's move on to the next trivia Tuesday.
I think we want to talk about more keyboards. No, okay, fine.
All right, for the new trivia question.
Why don't you take that, Zay?
I'm sorry. Okay. I'm a little tired, so I'm laughing a little easier today. Please remember, guys, don't put your answers in the chat. DM them to any of our social media or questions and we will enter you into our monthly drawing. For this week's Trivia Tuesday, in the television adaptation of George R.R. Martin's Song of Ice and Fire book series, Arya is giving a loaf of bread in the shape of an animal by hot pie. What animal does the bread resemble? That is a pretty great question. That's also very specific. Gray, do you think you'd know the answer to this one?
I feel like I should, because I have read the books and watched the series, but I don't, because I think that happens relatively early in both of those, and so there's been a lot of stuff has happened since then. I just my automatic answer I want to say is Hodor, but that's probably not right.
Is it in the
Oh.
Julia, you're fired. All right, but we did have some topics here. That's all for actual.
It does remind me of a cutscene that was when they were traveling, and I can't remember which group it was. I think it was what was the prince that got killed right away on the good guy's side. Anyway, his army was having trouble because they had an infestation of sparrows that were nesting within the horses, the hair on the horses, the tails and the mane and the forelocks and everything like that. And as a result, they couldn't move quietly. They just had birdsong everywhere. So they got a hold of looking for a wizard, and the wizard said, "Oh, it's no problem. You guys bake bread, right?" And I don't know if this is related to this Twitter thing, but if you guys bake bread, just take some yeast and sprinkle it on your horses, and it'll be fine. And they're like, "Wait, that doesn't make sense. What's that have to do with birds?" The guy said, "Well, you know, we live in Westeros and we're having this kingdom-wide war, and as they say, you know, yeast is yeast and nest is nest, and never the main shall tweet. Thank you. I dedicate that entire statement to Scoys.
Welcome to Worldbuilders Weekly. Please give Gray a clap in the chat.
Hey, I want credit for changing the joke and making it relevant to, you know, Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Okay, basically, you deserve an award.
Yeah.
So we did have some topics that we were going to go over here. I'm not good at segues.
Did we actually say how to submit the answers to the trivia question?
I briefly did. You can put it on any of our social medias for Worldbuilders or Worldbuilders Market, or message questions at worldbuilders.org to be entered into the monthly drawing. This feels like our morning meetings where Gray always forgets the things I say.
Yeah, I'm just making sure that my dedication to Scoys is on here. I could dedicate to Saucefire, but he doesn't deserve it. So weirdly enough, I mean, you're the one who you asked me to start this conversation off, but you're the one who brought it up. So we wanted to talk a little bit about non-traditional relationships and LGBTQ representation in fiction, in TV and books, particularly in the geek world.
In romance novels.
In romance novels, yes. Well,
yeah, only.
You know, that would be difficult, or maybe not so difficult. You know, actually, it does remind me that this is actually topical, because there was very recently a big hullabaloo. Somebody said, well, you know, why do people waste their time writing fan fiction? You know, they should be writing real fiction, and fan fiction just encourages people to write worse, you know. And I think my favorite was Arkady Martin, who said, oh, well, I guess I'll just have to give back my Hugo Award and all of the reviews that talked about how amazing my prose was, you know.
Yeah, I think Neil Gaiman also...
Oh, did he? Yeah.
Had a funny tweet about that too. Yeah, that's kind of like all of those people that are fan artists. Why don't you just go take a back seat when, I mean, what is an illustrator if they're not doing fan art? But,
Exactly. But anyway, so I mean, it's relevant because a lot of times the fact that there's a lack of representation. Yes, and like S.L. Wong's tweet about Burning Roses, which you can get signed in our store right now, was started out as basically fanfic. But one of the ways that people will counter the lack of representation is by writing fan fiction, and find ways to do that.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a way that you can, you know, find yourself represented in stories. It's like, well, if I can't find myself represented in stories, I will just have to write my own. I mean, you mentioned that it feels like it's a slow progression and lack of diversity. I mean,
yeah, I did put that in here because I feel like, you know, there's still this kind of hang up when it comes to, sometimes there is representation of LGBTQ, and maybe it's, you know, getting better in things that I haven't seen, but I feel like the majority of people you see are like still white, you know. It's almost like, oh, we'll expand, but we're not gonna go that far and show real people.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, or they go into a trope of things, you know, you know, this person is a lesbian, therefore we have to make sure that she's a witch too, you know. Or, you know, this person is trans, so we'll also make sure that they are, you know, a drag queen as well, or something like that. You know, it's just not. It's put into these things. I really enjoy places where you find them, and it's like, I won't even say non-traditional relationship. I'll just say it's a, because that the idea that it's a non-traditional relationship implies that it's somehow new and that these relationships haven't existed forever and ever and ever. I don't know what the better word would be, so I'd love to have I'm blanking on what it would be, but let's just say when relationships that are non-heteronormative are portrayed, and that is not the defining characteristic of the person. This is why I like Star Trek Discovery. It's like Commander Stamets is gay, and he talks about his husband, and it just comes out. They mention the husband in the same way. There was I can't remember. I think it was Gotham, maybe. There's some other thing where they just. Oh, no, it wasn't Gotham. It was The Flash on TV, the TV show The Flash, where the police commissioner, who is this hard-edged, raw kind of guy, talks about how his husband is going to be worried about him at home. And they don't make a big da-da-da. It's just the husband, the same way they might say the other way. So say, my kids or my wife or whatever. And when that happens, I think that goes a step towards normalizing. Now, I should add, I am somewhat personally invested in this because both I have non-traditional relationships and because my my middle daughter is a lesbian who is married to her spouse who is non-binary. So I have an invested interest in this becoming normalized because I don't want them to suffer the kinds of discrimination and things like that would happen.
Yeah, so I have an invested interest because I feel like I feel like there's this weird, I don't know how much you're on TikTok, but I think the younger generation, God bless them, because they really do know how to point out a lot of the kind of double standards and stereotypes very succinctly, I feel. And so I'm a bisexual person, and that tends to make people either not believe that you're into one gender. I mean, this has been back since, Bowie's interview where, he's like, I'm a bisexual. And she's like, but have you really answered the question? And he's like, I'm a bisexual.
Exactly.
She's like, but are you hiding something? But yeah, so there's kind of this thing where people are like, oh, so you're straight now because you're with a male. And it's like, no, I just, I'm with my partner and they just happen to be a male person. But I think TikTok does a great job at pointing that out. Thank you, younger people.
Yeah.
Younger than me.
I was just going to say, I'm on TikTok enough to know that you are not a young person on TikTok either.
No, that's what I mean.
That
is
boat
thank
sailed
you to
for
the
you
younger
about
people.
6 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I sincerely mean that. I feel like people 20 and younger, especially those high schoolers. Well, I don't know if that's still Gen Z. I don't know anymore, but I think it is.
Well, I mean, yeah. Then there's a whole other side argument of the fact that the whole generational thing is a false construct too. Essence of Erin brought up that the Supergirl TV show also handled things really well. They made up a trans superhero who is played by a trans actor, which important. I think is also a really important thing to have happen. And in that case, although I haven't watched Supergirl in a while, so I don't know actually what happens as they go along, but from what I could tell, again, the fact that they were trans was not a defining aspect of their identity, but it was certainly something that they did deal with, and it was not like it was consequence free, because that's the other direction you can go, is to say, oh, well, we'll just make no big deal about it and pretend like there is no kinds of discrimination or prejudices or stereotypes. I would be interested. The one thing that really made me angry, and it's gonna be a little bit of a spoiler. Can I make a spoiler about Buffy? I mean,
spoiler alert.
Has enough time passed on Buffy that we can make a spoiler? Okay. There's a character in Buffy who in what is a very strong lesbian relationship. And my daughters, when I was raising them, they saw this show, and it was definitely a relationship they were invested in. Yes, the original Buffy, and well, not the original Buffy, not the movie. But then she's killed very brutally, very senselessly. In fact, it's kind of a version of the refrigerator trope. She's killed for really no other reason except to motivate another character to get angry and go all bad. That's an ongoing thing, is like, oh, this person is, sexually promiscuous, this person is gay, this person is trans or whatever. At some point, they won't overtly be punished for it, but the writers just decide that person can then die. I don't actually watch the 100, but I remember at one point apparently some character was killed off in that, and they were like, okay, we've had it, because, or the queer community was saying we've had it because it was just ridiculous.
Yeah, that's for some reason, something about that reminded me of, I don't think that there were actually anything written about this, but I had a lot of discussions with my friends about how this might be a little bit sidelining, but in Mad Men, the end of the series seemed to punish all of the characters that were traditional housewives. And then really like lift up the ones that, were the women that became independent and like put themselves into the workforce. And it just seems so unfair because, when you're looking back on something generationally, it's not like women had a choice, before the 70s, and they could have their own bank accounts and things like that. Yeah, so I also hate when, things kind of, I don't love the, oh, it's a generational thing, they didn't know better, because that's fucking bullshit. But I also don't like when they don't give historical representation to people in a way that shows how they were afflicted by things. It's not like it was easy for people to just rise up in defense, and I don't know.
No, I agree. I mean, it's interesting. Kat Macbeth just mentioned that she's reading a book dedicated to how single women specifically are now driving political force. It's interesting to me that, a part of the reason why so much, you can draw a straight line from women being given or I don't say that, women acquiring for themselves the rights to, own property, provide their own health insurance, their own health care, support themselves, and no longer being chained to men having to provide that for them, and therefore going all the way up to where you have, the ability for people like Stacey Abrams to save the United States, or at least let it keep us alive a little longer. Yes, exactly. Straight line from access to birth control, sign up on their own finances, exactly. But here's the thought that goes in my mind. Like, think of how much the world has changed because of those things. And now, there's talk about universal basic income and universal health care. What happens when we release everybody from the chains of a job that they only do because it provides these things? What if they didn't have that? How much would the world change further? That's where my brain goes anyway. Corinna has a question in chat, kind of related. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, so Jeannie is answering this. Thank you, Jeannie. But yeah, I needed to read this out loud a little bit, but related, slightly off topic, suggestions would you make to someone who's new to referring to people by their choice of gender? They've never had a trans friend before. I have a new trans friend, and I don't want to offend them by accidentally referring to them in the wrong way. But I have by referring to them incorrectly to someone else. Okay. I guess I don't understand that question. Ask them.
I do.
Prefer to be called by, I would say, is appropriate.
I mean, so in the past, we did very intentionally inclusive convention work, and so we put a lot of thought into how to ask this. One thing is to avoid the word preferred pronouns, the phrase preferred pronouns. You just say, hey, what are the pronouns? What are your pronouns? And until you know their pronouns, you use the word they. And you can find many, many documentations of how the use of the plural they has been used in a singular way in the English language for a long time, probably by all of us as well. In fact, every single person who thinks that it is not used in a singular way, well, they should definitely be taken to task for that. See what I did there? That was a little linguistic trickery. Anyway, so you just say, what are your pronouns? And I'll say, I had a personal experience of this. I had someone who I actually dated for a while, and then we drifted apart. And when I ran into them again, they had transitioned, and my friend Lee, female, had become Lee, male. And so definitely there was a lot of, mind distance, because one of my closest friends, we'd remained friends even after we weren't dating. And you just get used to it. And Lee in particular had said, he had kind of a 3 strikes rule. He's like, the first 3 times that you, thank you, Jeannie. Jeannie is acknowledging my innate ability to entertain and be amusing. Lee said that, you get 3 strikes, like in any given thing. Like if we were at a convention, if I called him by the wrong pronouns, he would say, yep, that's strike 1, no big deal. Strike 2. If we got to strike 3, then he just basically said, look, I'm going to feel like you're really not trying very hard. So what I found is that it helps to have these conversations with other people. Like we will practice talking, a bunch of friends of Lee, when Lee was not there, would get together and deliberately talk about Lee and practice using the right pronouns. Like we would say, hey, did you see what Lee did? Oh yes, he did this thing. And it would be awkward, but we're only being awkward with each other. And that way, when we're around Lee, it becomes easier. And we also just never hesitate. And I think this is actually a great thing in Worldbuilders, is that I think we all are very easily, like, if I use the wrong pronoun with someone, somebody will say, oh, hey, Gray, that's actually a they, or something like that. And since, we even have one of our board members who uses they pronouns, and we just make a point to use them. It is not, I'm not going to say you absolutely won't offend somebody, because that can happen. And especially it can get confusing if it is someone who is gender fluid and may choose different pronouns depending on how it goes. But again, it's like word games. We're geeks. We like word games. We're gonna do that. So that's my 2 cents. What do you think, Zay?
Oh, I have a really close best friend who was, I actually don't know if it's offensive to say female and male in that context, so I use woman and man, just because I have also a friend who struggles with actual like chromosome deficiencies, so like they get sensitive about the use of actual like sex and gender differentiation. So anyways, I have a really close best friend, and so I am kind of maybe I think a lot of people that know me know that I'm a little bit more straightforward and blunt with certain things. Yeah, Gray is super stressed. So I just like I just am a little blunt, and I make it a point to just say it out loud if I'm a little nervous or messing something up. I'll just say, oh my gosh, I'm really sorry. I really fucked that up, and I'm super trying, and I love you to death. Please be patient with me. I acknowledge you, and I'm really doing my best over there. And then you do your best, because hopefully you do love your friends. But yeah, I think being forward and acknowledging it to someone, or if it's in public, maybe just acknowledging it in a text or something, because you also don't want to embarrass someone in a group of people either. But I don't know, my friends and I are always more direct with each other, so if it is in a group and I mess something like that up, they, I think, prefer me to say it out loud, and I do say it out loud, like, oh my gosh, apologies, like, obviously, so that's kind of my take. But I actually haven't had too many uncomfortable encounters, I don't think, with people. Maybe it's just my generation is a little more used to the ask. Not compared to your generation, Gray. I feel like you personally probably have, friends, a lot of different diversity in your groups. But somebody like my dad, thinking of somebody like my dad who's older and probably doesn't have those people in his groups, probably he's super inclusive and open-minded, but maybe would struggle with the like the embarrassments of afraid to embarrass someone by asking, which I think is another thing that people have. If someone is presenting very feminine and as a woman, it might be in your head that maybe they just want to be called by he, she, but it's really hard to I think it's hard to just assume those kinds of things.
We have a lot of questions in the chat that I think apply to what you've just been saying here. Jeannie mentioned that even on the Pat Chat Discord, which is really remarkably makes a remarkable effort to be inclusive and kind to people, including people that are messing up with gender and things like that. But they try to avoid take things very personally in that context because they're family, and most really try to respect my life. And then Unlikely Math says that, and I'm going to use they, because actually Unlikely Maths, I think I know your gender, but I'm not absolutely positive. So I will say I like the idea of normalizing they as a default, since it makes no assumptions. However, there are folks here that have changed their pronouns from he, him to she, her, or vice versa. Do you see a problem with this? Personally, a problem to being referred to as they? So I don't have a problem with being referred to as they, and in fact, I have at times at events I have put on. There was a period of time that I was trying to normalize they, and so I chose to use they, them pronouns. And I actually decided not to when a non-binary friend of mine said, hey, it's not that we need more they out there, it's that we need to normalize that even people who look, believe it or not, I do somewhat present as masculine. And I know it's a surprise, that it's better for somebody who, it's more helpful for someone who presents as masculine and has no problem using that term to automatically put in the pronouns, because then it just becomes a default of, yes, everybody puts in their pronouns. So I think it depends on the person. I do think it goes back to what Jeannie said about respect. It goes back to the idea of, if I will use they until I'm sure of someone's pronouns, and then it's a matter of respect to make an effort to use the pronouns that they want to be identified as.
See, I have a little bit of a different take personally. I don't know if we should normalize, if they was a normalized part of our language and society, and not just an effect of, avoidance almost for some people. So, if you have someone who is transgender, for instance, and you might think it's appropriate to refer to them as them, they. For that person, for instance, if it's a transgender woman, it might be a sense of their self-identity to be identified as the gender of their choice, which is a presentation of she, her. So I just I think I would rather just normalize asking that person, so that, because they I think can still be the acknowledgement of, oh, you seem a little different, so I'm just gonna call you them they until you correct me, I think can be hurtful to that person. So I'd always just I think asking is still appropriate. And while that
Oh
might
yeah,
seem
no,
like,
I wasn't. Yeah, I was.
oh,
I
I'm
didn't
not
express myself well
arguing
enough.
with you, Gray. I'm
Yes,
just
you are.
saying representative to what's going on in the chat. And I think first people don't like to ask because they are afraid of embarrassing someone. And I think that can be, that's you. I think that I like to think people are generally good, and I think it goes into that saving face kind of thing that's naturally human. But yeah, there you go, Jeannie. Thank you. Consent. This is the way. So yeah,
This is
I
the
think
way.
you just make sure that someone is comfortable and accepting of what you're calling them, and
I also
it comes
wanna-
down to respect.
I want to shout out to Zoe, who her son came out this year, and so Zoe is a great example of someone who is I think Zoe, I think it's a great example of a parent doing it right, in that the answer to how do I refer to them and things like that is how do they want to be, what is their preference. In Lee's particular case, we always refer to Lee as he, but occasionally we will refer to the times when Lee was a woman. And back when he was a woman, he would do such and such a thing, and that kind of thing is the way usually it happens. And if Lee ever calls me up and says, hey, I want you to refer to me as she back then, that's fine too. So, we have a recommendation from Unlikely Maths. Here on Twitch, I do highly recommend the Pronouns browser extension for Twitch chat that's available for Chrome and Firefox. It gives you a pronouns badge next to your name.
Thank
Hey,
you.
we will
That's
pass
really
that
nice.
on to our engineer and see what can be done. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I do find it funny when somebody sits there and go, I've had it happen, like I'll put my pronouns up, people go, oh God, why are you bothering to put your pronouns up? It's obvious that you're a man. I'm like, so if you think it's obvious that I'm a man, well then we need to talk about what obvious is.
Right. Yeah, mine says she, they on the chat, and it's mostly because I don't care what I'm gendered as. Like if somebody said Zay and called me he, which happens a lot because Zay is generally short for Isaiah or Xavier, which are usually male names. But yeah, mine says she, they, but the truth is like I don't care, but it's also there for ease.
It also can be until such a time as when everybody treats all genders the same, it can be very useful to have the ability to present yourself as a different gender. There's a easily found thing on the internet of two sales reps, one man, one woman, and for a week he basically had to handle her accounts, and he couldn't figure out, well, he was surprised that him trying to do work when people thought that he was a woman made his work twice as difficult, because people just weren't as willing to do things for him and help him out and stuff like that. And it was a huge eye-opening experience.
Yeah, man, those studies are hard, I think, to hear as the person on the unfortunate end of those things, because it's kind of like, and there's a really great Twitter post too on it where it says, yeah, conduct your studies, but also you could just fucking believe us.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I mean, I ran into that myself. I had at one point was traveling with my assistant, and she was driving, and one of our presenters for an event was trying to contact her, and so I just grabbed her phone and I was going to answer the questions or whatever, and I was amazed at how dismissive and disrespectful he was. And then I said, oh, by the way, this is Gray typing on her phone, and the complete reverse U-turn. It was so amazing, and we stopped inviting him to present after that, because what is the saying? You can be judged by how you treat the people who have no power over you.
I mean, I don't know if that's the saying, but it's the right. Yeah. It's the right thing.
So.
This conversation has gone in a way different direction that I appreciate.
Hey, Hey, what's
But-
some fiction shows and books we like that do this?
Yeah,
Well,
that's fine. That was what's in the script, and the script is
Yeah.
never what makes it on screen. So
Well, I mean, I think we can come back around to it with the idea. One other thing I wanted to mention, because I had this conversation actually with Aaron. A lot of you in the chat know about Aaron. He asked me how I felt about Discovery, and particularly the Discovery final episode. Short version is I love it. I love everything about Discovery. And he was commenting that, a lot of people who belong to my demographic are saying that they don't necessarily like, they feel like they can't relate to Discovery and they don't understand certain things. I know one friend of mine was like, I couldn't believe it. There were 2 Black women with braids on the bridge at the same time, and I was like, wow, that's true. I didn't notice that. But the short version is that I always figure if something happens in a series that I don't get or doesn't feel like I can relate to it or I don't understand, it's like, well, hey, that wasn't made for me. That was made for somebody else. I'm not a big fan of Jane Austen either, but man, my partner, she loves some Jane Austen. So I'm like, well, obviously I am not the particular interest niche that was made for. So I think you can actually gain a lot from deliberately watching things that weren't made for you and maybe discover that you have more interests than you'd think.
Yeah, and it's also nice, I think, too, and important to see like who and what is representing the characters that's written for. So, is it a I guess I'm kind of thinking of book to screen transition here, but sometimes if it's like is it a person's part who's like, say it's written like, and the character is Black, is it a Black actor, and what writer was the person contributing to that? Is it the experience of a Black person that's really cliche and also written by a white person who has never experienced the actual stuff firsthand that they're writing about? Or if it is written by them, what ways did they come to those conclusions? I think is really important. It's kind of what is behind the scenes of what we're saying, because sometimes there are a lot of books where there's women characters and women representation, and boy, are they god awful. I don't feel like you can tell it's not written by a woman. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, the men writing women tropes are pretty. Yeah. Yeah. There's also the question came from Imperfect Poor. The opinions on Lev Grossman's The Magicians with the Quentin and Elliot relationship. I really can't speak to that. I've only read the first book in Lev Grossman's thing, and maybe the second one too. But it was a while ago, and I haven't actually watched more than like the first 2 episodes of the series, so I don't have an opinion on that. Zay, do you?
No, I'm sorry, but I think it's a great suggestion, and it kind of makes me want to watch it.
I can tell you, I do appreciate it when an adaptation in either direction will sort of make up for the problems in the others. Like, for example, there's not a lot of diversity in the original Star Wars movies, but there is a lot of, if you read the Aftermath trilogy by Chuck Wendig, there's all kinds of diverse characters and different relationships, and they're awesome. So I think that made up for it. And likewise, The Boys, the graphic novels, are pretty misogynistic and terrible in a lot of ways, that they didn't, even when they're trying to be edgy, like they just kind of do edgy in the wrong way, to where it's destructive as opposed to illustrative. And I think that the TV series did a good job of making up for that in giving some characters more of a backstory and more personality and things like that. So
the moral of the story here is read authors' fanfic versions
Yes.
or TV fanfic versions of things to get your needs.
Exactly. What did
Full
Micronex
circle.
say? Micronex said, I do want to point out we're all relatively well-read, empathetic, and willing to change. I'm not willing to change. Okay, expect everyone to change, but realizing you don't have access to the same space of tools we do. Yes, keeping in mind gives more patience when talking to stubborn people. Yes. It is literally what I am saying every morning when we finish our morning briefing and I say, let's go out and build a better world. It's trying to create more supportive spaces for that. And we all do that in our own little ways as we go.
Yeah, that one is hard. It can be really hard. I think people deserve hand holding up until a certain point, I think, because it's really hard to sit there and argue with someone who can be non-emotive about things that don't affect their own humanity, while other people are suffering greatly. So, but yeah, I still think it's a good point. Especially if you know a person personally, odds of you being able to change their mind and have an actual conversation with them is far greater than just a random voice behind a screen on the internet. Yep. So can start at home. It's a good place to start.
Should we do our lightning rounds? We realized when we were planning this that that we I don't know if we did enough fiction shows and books that we like to do this, but I do know that we talked about the fact we haven't actually done the lightning round with each other. Like we haven't actually said, hey, what do you like all these things? So yeah, I think it might be time for that. I'm trying to think if there's other books. I mean, I did tell Jamie that I should bring up Robert Heinlein as a fine example of inclusivity and feminist writing, but she seemed to think that would not be as comforting as I thought it would be. So on the Discovery thing, when the cool thing happened in the last episode of the last season, I yelled at my phone seeing happiness. Yeah. Yep. I will agree. I can't wait until, well, I will say I will highly recommend Women at Warp podcast for their season 3 of Discovery wrap up. I am enjoying it so much and enjoying reliving. I love their wrap ups in general. It's a great podcast if you're a Trekkie. All right, let's go for the lightning round. We got 8 minutes left.
Oh man, I actually didn't. I said, oh, we should ask each other these, and then I thought about none of them. So this absolutely will be on the spot, and that's probably the way it should be.
All right, Zay. If I say, hey, Zay, I'm gonna. What would you like to drink?
So I love a good bourbon or whiskey. Old fashioned is amazing. Moscow mules or a really good French press with some good cream are my 3 probably top ways to go. What about you, Gray?
Good question. Probably the best I've had, a Balvenie Caribbean cask whiskey.
Is Caribbean cask the brand?
No, it's a special. It's a. What's the right word I'm looking for, Beth? It's by the Balvenie. It's how it's finished. Yeah, it's put into casks in the Caribbean. I don't know how it's finished. It just tastes good. Part of it though might be because I have mainly had it at a friend's house in Pittsburgh that I really like. I've just known him for years. He's a really good friend. And I kind of associate his house with that and having good times. So yeah. What if you could have anything you wanted to eat, what would you have?
Is this one of those, like, if you could only eat one thing for the rest of your life kind of questions?
No, I don't think. I mean, because nothing for the rest of your life, but I mean,
I think spicy curry.
Let's say for your next meal you could have anything you wanted.
Spicy curry for sure.
Spicy curry.
Oh yeah, like red curry.
Yeah, in my case, I mean, I don't know if it's a meal necessarily, but I mean, if I am divorcing myself from all health thoughts and things like that, I'm really a big fan of a good lasagna, homemade lasagna with lots of the various kinds of cheeses and stuff, and then with a hot fudge sundae for dessert.
Oh man,
That's
hot
yeah.
fudge sundae.
And I when I say hot fudge sundae, I mean a hot fudge brownie sundae, like a fresh baked brownie still warm from the oven, vanilla ice cream on top, hot fudge all over that.
It's
Yeah.
hard to say if I was just like associating it with the area I was, so like I had expectations, but I think in Rome was hands down the best lasagna I ever had. It was just like a slice, very thick on a plate, and it was served like that was the whole meal.
Mm-hmm.
And it was insane. It was so good. So if you're in Rome, try lasagna.
When in Rome, try lasagna. All right, here we go. When in Rome, do as Zay does. All right, gotcha.
What a great read, Gray. What would you recommend? What's highest on your list right now?
Trouble the Saints. Trouble the Saints is it is in the running for the best book I have ever read. It just took me in by Elia Don Johnson. Yeah, that is the one that I'm telling everybody, oh my God, you should read this, but don't do it alone in a house in the dark, in a dark and stormy night, because it will fuck with your brain. But it's so good. It's so good. But then again, I mean, this way, I liked Lovecraft Country as a series. Loved it. If you like Lovecraft Country, you'll like that. So, all right. And how about you? What's high on your reading list right now?
My number one book I always recommend to people is The Blade Itself, Joe Abercrombie. You guys have heard me talk about all the time. It's just such a good book, and it's I love the writing style.
Yeah. That whole series and things. Although I'll tell you, that along those lines, Best Served Cold is, I think, the best revenge story I've ever read. And it's kind of a standalone from The First Law. I mean, it's in the same world, but it's standalone. It's so good.
Something you love to watch.
These days, we are, Discovery obviously, but the season is done. Currently, we go day to day waiting for the next episode of The Expanse. And one of the reasons I do it is because I know what's going to happen. I've read the books. Actually, I'm in the midst of reading the latest one, but I'm ahead of the series in terms of the books, and I still love it. I mean, I love all of the characters. I think they do a really good job of portraying their various foibles, and so The Expanse is my go-to TV show. I need to get a t-shirt.
For mine, besides reruns of The Office all day, every day, I'm gonna take a left field here. If you like animated adult shows, please watch Gary and His Demons. It is so funny, guys, and it is, it's definitely an adult cartoon, but it's very funny.
Where is that on? What is that on?
Where can you find Gary and His Demons? Oh, you'd probably have to Google it. I don't remember. Okay. We have one of the TVs with all the different channels. Apparently it's on Hulu. So yeah, I think we watch it. Thank you, Daniel, in the chat. VRV. That's the one we watch it on.
Actually, if we're going to talk about, just to mention Hulu, every once in a while we're like, I really need to get my brain out of my head for 20 minutes or so, and we will watch What We Do in the Shadows, which is that is a good, because every once in a while we're like, hey, let's watch something relaxing, and it turns out it's about a pandemic or something. It's like, come on. But yes, What We Do in the Shadows is just brilliant, and part of it's because I have known those people in real life, and it's interesting. Literally, like, I know people in the vampire community, and that's exactly what they're like.
Something in your room someone would be surprised about.
I don't know. What?
You're right,
I mean,
Jeannie. They should really
I
focus
know.
on things. But
I know. Let me show you my desktop printer.
Be enthusiastic, guys.
So this is my desktop printer. It is actually a printing press that I 3D printed, and you ink tablets or the ink little panels, and you put paper on them, and then you roll it through and use it as a print, because I wanted
That's
to have
pretty sick.
I wanted to print out a desktop printer. Yep, I know.
I'm showing this just because Julia brought it up at the beginning of the stream.
Yes.
I also do artwork, and lately I've been focusing on puns. So I made this thing called Gatorade, and it is a gator in a pitcher of lemonade. So yeah, if you guys think my art is ridiculous,
so perfect.
You can follow me. I'm on Instagram at Zay Olsen, ZAYOLSEN. Some selfish
we might
dropping there.
We might have to see about making that into a Geeks Doing Good, fundraiser type thing. Well.
Thank you for your compliments in the chat, guys.
Yeah, that is amazing.
If you could sit down with anyone and have a conversation, real or imagined, dead or alive, who would it be?
Probably Octavia Butler. And I would be like, okay, you were so spot on for your predictions of what would happen. Did you ever think of how we could get out of it? How can we change this? No, I've loved Octavia Butler's work for, I don't know, as long as I can remember. I read Parable of the Sower way back in the day. It astonishes me as we go through things how spot on she's been with a lot of her predictions, and just the way that she thinks about relationships and the way she portrays both the relationship of people to society and people with each other and what can be. I don't know anybody that handles all three of those kinds of things as well, and I just think it'd be fascinating to get to speak with her for a while. So
yeah, absolutely.
How about you?
I have like a couple that are very art history related.
That's cool. Artemis Gentileschi is also another one.
Yeah, so Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, definitely. I want to know what is in his tomb. I need to know. Also, I would ask the Minoan Empire, what happened, guys? Where'd y'all go? We want to know. Those are my...
Wow, you just tapped into an emperor and then an entire historical empire. Okay.
Okay, look, I could ask one person who knows their shit in the Minoan Empire. If I could just talk to one person from the empire.
That is great. That is a great great push there.
It's the mysteries of the world that you want to know, you know.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, there was somebody that like we follow on Twitter and stuff like that, just wrote books about like the fall of the empire. I want to say, oh God, it's right on the edge of my brain. I don't know. Anyway, there's a recent book out that's about how three different civilizations, how they fell and disappeared, and you know, the happy story is, hey, guess what? Civilizations fall, life goes on. I'm not sure if that's comforting right now or not, but you know.
I mean, there's evidence that they moved on and became like a whole nother people that are up, but just look it up. We don't have time.
Right. It's like, oh my God, look at the time. I have to go take Commander Saru on an away mission. Which is the way to say I have to walk the dog. So we obviously, we hope you had fun. talking with us today. Occasionally we like to do these kinds of podcasts with either us or other people within the World Builders community. And we also like to have other guests. So if you have ideas for particular guests that you would love to have us talk to, both let us know and let them know. If they hear from fans or friends or whatever, hey, we really think you should talk to the World Builders people, it helps out. So we don't just seem like, attention seeking.
That's people. Anyone in the geek community, guys, people that are famous at Ren fairs, authors, cool geek TV show people, even if it's voice actors for awesome, Studio Ghibli, we would have anyone on.
Yeah,
emphasis on that last one.
even people that aren't necessarily famous, but just are the embodiment of geekiness. We'd love to talk with them. Right.
If you have a favorite jouster at your local medieval fairs, we'll have them on. That sounds amazing.
Stant Latore. Okay, we will mark down that name and make sure we look into that. Thank you. All right. Remember to check out World Builders Market for our both common, unique, rare, and even epic level items. Autographed editions of great books such as Burning Roses, tabletop games, art, homewares. We have a second edition of TAC, by the way. That's one thing that's really a new thing we have. And even things like homewares and cups and cool mugs and stuff like that. I managed to go down to having only 1 cup of coffee a day by switching to an Aeolian mug. And so I have an Aeolian mug of coffee.
So you're having 3 cups of coffee.
Worked for...
Gray is now actually having more coffee than he had previously.
Worked for Kublai Khan, it'll work for me. Or was it Ogadai? I don't know, one of them. All right, and if you have comments, questions, or suggestions, you can always ask questions at worldbuilders.org. You still answer that one, right, Zay?
I'm not. That's Jonathan. You guys may have met him on our lovely after party.
Yes, Jonathan will handle that, and he enjoys hearing from you. So be sure and just reach out and say hi, and so he has to click on that email and do more work. In the meantime, we'll be back next week, maybe with a guest, maybe by ourselves, maybe it'll be some people totally different. Who knows? Zay, any closing words?
Thanks for joining us, guys. As always, it's super fun to hang out with y'all. Like Gray mentioned, if you do have something that you'd like to direct to me, you can still reach me through questions and I'll take a look at it.
Yep. All right, and with our final sign off, oh heck, let's just go old school. Viva Moose!
There it is.